Okay, so welcome everyone. This session is called Blueprints and Opportunities to Transform Systems. And we're going to talk about two cases where a strategic framework has been used to develop roadmaps for sustainability. So the first is Vinyl Plus. It's a case in the European plastics industry. It's a value chain case. And the second is in Åland, a whole bioregion and autonomous region with a roadmap for sustainability. Erica, if I hand over to you to just say a little bit about who we are, and I'll let you go first, and then I can explain who I am as well. I don't hear you there, Erica, so maybe I'll start then.
Well, I'm here now, sorry.
Okay, go for it.
I'm Erica Scott. I'm an alumni of the master's program called Strategic Leadership Towards Sustainability. And I'm working now as a senior advisor with the Sustainability Collaborative and also as an independent on Åland here. So that's a little bit about my background.
And I'm Richard Blume. I'm a senior advisor. I've been working in the Natural Steps Network for over 10 years, I guess it's closer to 15 now, working, helping organizations embed sustainability, mostly in the business sector. And I've done quite a lot of work in the chemical industry. So that's the case that I'm going to present as well. Erica and I are part of starting a new initiative called the Sustainability Collaborative, and it's part of the Natural Step Network. But our focus in the collaborative is to connect professionals and who are interested to work together on projects that are really about working together in this larger collaborative format, which we think is really important now as more and more people are jumping into the sustainability space, and also seeing the need for this larger scale transformation of whole systems. So we're going to just now do a quick introduction. Erica, do you want to take it from here?
Oh, yes. So we would like for each of us here on the call today, and thank you for coming. We're really looking forward to this presentation and to hear your thoughts on the cases. But we would also like for you to introduce yourselves, and if you would just take a brief round with your name and perhaps the organization that you represent here today. So we'll just do it in a popcorn style, so anyone could go first.
So I can break the ice. My name is Stanley. I am sitting in Stockholm, and I am part of the Natural Step Network and part of the Sustainability Collaborative as well. And I am a senior advisor also on sustainability. And so I look forward to hear about the cases. So thank you.
Maybe I'll go next.
Yes, please.
I'm Alexandra Lichtenberg. I'm also an alumni of the MSLS program in Sweden. I am presently in Lisbon, also working towards sustainability.
So it seems that I'm not sure if the others that are on the line there, I know there's potentially people streaming in as well that obviously won't be able to introduce themselves as they're direct streaming. Is there anyone else there that I know there's a couple of people there from Planetiers as well. And our hope with this session as well is that through the recording, because we know there's been a lot of people that have contacted us and said they weren't able to make it at the specific time, that by having this recorded, we'll be able to use this presentation and disseminate it to those who are unable to attend today.
Morning.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Hi. I can make a short intro, although I'm not part of any big organizations yet, but I am working in kind of sustainability area for the last 4 or 5 years, and recently joined an organization called Mangmande Orphan Care Trust, who I'm helping to bring permaculture education center into life, and working with other organizations in Zimbabwe on regenerative agricultural practices and other sustainability issues, and interested in today's talk about the strategic elements of that. Thank you.
You can see Matthias has joined as well here. We're just doing a short round of introductions, so I think it's Matthias, is it? If you want to say hi, now's the chance.
Hi, I'm your host. I'm Teresa from Planetiers. We're just accompanying Richard and everybody here at Blueprints, and we're very happy to have you. We'll just leave you with Richard.
Going up, and yeah, let's continue.
Okay, so I have the controls.
Yes, so the agenda for today, we just go over it briefly. We just did a welcome and check in, and whoever is checking in later could do that in the chat as well. And first, we would like to make more of a generic introduction to what we think about transforming systems and the methodology behind it. After that, we will go into 2 case presentations, as we said already, Vinyl Plus and Åland as a bioregion. And we will have a brief short Q&A after each of those, just to clarify any misunderstandings maybe, or questions. And after that, we'll have, it says a workshop, but we'll also like to reframe it more like a dialogue on how to use backcasting perhaps to scale up, and yeah, your thinking so far from the cases that you have been presented to. And then we'll end with a short summary and wrap up. So this will be the 2 hours ahead. So warmly welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to give a short, just some framing thoughts around what are we talking about when we say transforming systems. And, you know, there's a lot of discussion now about everything needing to change. There's so much, so many big problems in the world when you look at it from a environmental as well as a social perspective and even economic perspective. So we wanted to just touch a little bit on our approach and where we're coming from on this. We don't have time to go into so much about different theories or ideas around systems change, because there are different models and philosophies around this. But what we're going to do is talk about a generic method that is that has been designed and developed over 3 decades as a way to help organizations and individuals, and even whole groups of individuals and organizations, to plan for sustainability, to guide action towards sustainability. We have a few generic insights that we think are important when thinking about how to transform a whole system. And those are relevant to both cases that we'll hear afterwards. So we just want to present them and just explain a little bit things to look out for and to reflect on as we get into the cases. So the first insight that we see is that obviously if we have lots of different actors that want to work together, it will help to have a common vision. And the process of engaging people in creating that vision is probably just as important as the vision itself, because that's through that process, it's building engagement, it's building alignment and the overall clarity when there's so many possible pathways that might lead people in different directions. So we want to sort of emphasize that. The second point here is about authentic leadership. And that's really about the role of individuals taking a stand and actually making a commitment, and that can then be embodied in, you know, how those organizations influence the system that they're part of. So really thinking about the individuals and the champions, and even then the groups of individuals that are actually making bold commitments to sustainability. So that's the second point. And the third is really thinking around process design. And obviously when there's a lot of complexity and variables in a whole system, having a structure can really be valuable in making sure that people are aligned and that there's sort of clarity and there isn't just chaos everywhere. So we see some points here about, again, making sure that all the right stakeholders are engaged in a process, that you identify where the intervention points are, which you don't always know in advance. And then also reflecting on the fact that sometimes people might have a tendency to think it's one or the other from the perspective that it should be the government that solves these problems, or it should be something that comes from the grassroots up. So this combination of whether something's driven from the top or bubbles up from below, and that's something that we'll touch on in the cases as well. And obviously when we're talking about systems, the systems that we're talking about is global society and our economy within the biosphere. So that's very inherent for us when we're thinking about systems change. It's the system of how the economy, society, and environment all are nested together that we need to transform. So we'll get into that as well. And it's a key part of like the whole philosophy and the methodology that we're going to present. So on this point then about systems, society today is very complex, and we have people with different specializations in different areas developing more and more knowledge in their own silo, if you say it like that. And one of the problems that we see is that the more deep we go in our own specialization of knowledge, sometimes the harder it is to relate to people in other specializations of knowledge, or to not be able to see what's in common. So often then you have solutions that are developed in a silo or in a domain, but then the effects on other silos or domains are not necessarily taken into account. So you end up with this reductionism. And what we're talking about with systems thinking and this idea of seeing the whole is to zoom out. And in order to zoom out and get people in different specializations understanding the same issues together, it's sometimes requires creating a new language. And that's one of the things that this framework that we're going to present is intended to do. It's a way of zooming out and trying to simplify the complexity and get consensus on higher order data, higher order overview, rather than go into the specific details of a specific discipline. So if I just move forward then, one of the real benefits of this is then that you can have people in different parts of society, in different industries, in different roles, even within the same organization, that have a shared language so that they can be aligned in working towards shared goals. And we call this the Framework for Strategic Sustainable Development, sometimes called the Natural Step Framework. And it's based on this separation of different levels and how to think about planning in a complex system. So if we can separate these levels and discuss them one by one, it's much easier, and we don't get mixed up on thinking an action is a goal and a tool is a goal when in fact it's a tool to achieve something. So we use this structure here to help people think about what is the system that they're trying to address or change, or that they're part of. And then how do you define success in that system? And then, of course, thinking about if you know where you want to go, you can then plan how to achieve it. So you can have a strategic sort of guidance around how you do that. And then that is what should inform the specific actions that you take, because you've defined your goals and you have a strategy and a set of guiding principles to lead you towards success. And then the tools that we have are supposed to guide us in the implementation of those actions overall to help us achieve success in the system. So the system we're talking about is, like I said, society in the biosphere. And what we have also as part of this methodology is a science-based definition of sustainability that has come from studying this system. So you can see on the left, we have economy, society, and biosphere in a scientific model with the cycles of nature. And on the right, we have a set of principles that have been defined as a way to sort of basically aggregate all the problems and say, if we could stop undermining that system, what would it look like? So that's what we use basically as a set of criteria to help people think about the future they want to create. It's basically a framing constraints for visions and the future. And what we do then is that we use that methodology, those principles, in a process called backcasting. So backcasting is about imagining the future that you want to create, knowing that it's framed by a set of scientific requirements for sustainability, and standing there and imagining what is success for me, my organization, my industry, my region, etc. And the process of doing that is quite creative, and helping people create this shared vision together is what then anchors the whole process moving forward. A shared vision, so that then you can assess the current reality or the present. You can start doing creative processes to come up with solutions, and then you can prioritize them in a strategic planning process with clear criteria that are leading you in the right direction, that are flexible, and are giving you the return on investment to progress the whole way towards the vision. So that's essentially the methodology that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to go in and discuss how that has been used in 2 cases as been explained. So I will go now into the first case. And this is a case in an industrial setting, the PVC industry in Europe. And it's specifically now embodied in an industry roadmap called Vinyl Plus. So I'm going to start just by giving you the full picture all at once. There's a lot on this slide. And in many ways, it's kind of a story about something that started over 20 years ago. And at that time, there was a lot of debate about PVC. There still is some debate in some places. And that is what led to a process of a series of initiatives that have now led to an industry roadmap, if you say it like that. So I'm going to talk about some of these. We won't have time to go into all the details. And these are very much presented from the perspective of the natural step, which played quite an important role in getting the industry to where it is today. So if we just step back to the late 90s, PVC was in the spotlight of Greenpeace, having campaigns to try and get retailers to ban PVC. And the retailers didn't know whether to listen to Greenpeace or the industry. And the natural step was asked to do an evaluation using these sustainability principles that I referred to and this methodology to bring a value neutral perspective on PVC. What are its challenges and what are the opportunities, etc. And that is really what led to that report, this UK study, PVC and Evaluation, using the natural step framework, is really what led to a series of cascading initiatives that over time have led up to now those principles being adopted into the Vinyl Plus industry roadmap. It wasn't addressed in the first commitment, but the definition of sustainability and the key challenges have been worked on in the industry for the last 10 years in this Vinyl Plus program since 2011. The process is about to be renewed, so there will be a continuation up to 2030. So now I'm just going to go through some examples to give you a flavor of how the methodology was used and what we see that it added to the situation. The first was, like I was saying, Greenpeace having a lot of concern about PVC. By doing a gap analysis and using these sustainability principles, it was possible to get Greenpeace and the industry and others like the Body Shop, etc., to come around a table and say, well, are we talking about emotions here? Are we talking about facts? Are we talking about the future? Are we talking about the present? And that those principles basically were a way to defuse the conversation and build consensus on the challenges that the industry needed to address. basically, if the industry wants to have a role in a sustainable society, it needs to align with these criteria. And that is not just for the PVC industry, that's all industries. 20 years ago, it was more of a concern about specific plastics. Now it's plastics in general that people are talking about. So this process has been a real challenge for the industry, but it's also helped them get to a position that they are today, which is doing much better than some of the other plastics that are in the spotlight now. So the study basically concluded that there's 5 key challenges for PVC to become sustainable, let's say it like that. And if you think 20 years ago, there weren't too many industries discussing carbon neutrality. Now everyone talks about controlled loop or the circular economy. So you can see that these principles were, because they were grounded in science, helped the industry see the challenges well ahead of like the mainstream debate about some of these issues. From a single company taking up those challenges and working on them, to then engaging its supply chain, to then trying to spread the knowledge around this methodology and these sustainability principles, we ended up in a program called Leading Change for a Sustainable Chemical Industry. And again, back to the message I said about the change agents, these are some of the change agents in the industry that eventually advocated for those challenges to be taken up at the industry level. So now we have Vinyl Plus, a voluntary 10-year commitment towards sustainability of the whole industry. Over 200 companies, 65 billion euros in turnover. Quite a large initiative, considering that it involves the whole value chain of the PVC industry in Europe. You can see a bit on where PVC is used today. And again, one of the real achievements of having this shared language and this platform, I think, coming together, is that it's been a way to unite the whole value chain and ensure that the whole industry takes responsibility for the collective issues around PVC. In the past, it's been very hard to get change to happen because there've been fingers pointed at parts of the industry, whereas it's the whole industry that needs to address their challenges together. And that's what Vinyl Plus is a program to do. So they've built their own recycling system. They've gone from the guys at the back of the chain that create the resin to these additives that get added into PVC resin, to then you convert it into pipes and window profiles and cables and flooring and everything like that. Essentially the program has adopted those 5 challenges that came from analyzing PVC, and there's a set of targets, and every year there's a progress report, and very much an effort to try and change the dialogue from being defensive to owning up to the challenges and acknowledging them, and then addressing them in a transparent way that is open and not, let's say, constructive towards stakeholders who may be opposed to the industry. So now just to explain a bit how this was done, obviously it's about the backcasting that I mentioned, helping the industry stand in the future and think about what would PVC look like in a sustainable future when it aligns with these sustainability principles, and then trying to clarify and build consensus on the challenges that they would need to solve, trying to come up with ideas around the possibilities and the different pathways forward, and then building them into priorities into a 10-year roadmap. So you could see in this image, the blue area where it says today and some point into the future. The Vinyl Plus roadmap only goes up to 2020, and then the next commitment will go another decade, and ultimately it should still be leading them towards a vision that aligns with the sustainability principles. So here's an example of the types of participatory workshops where this method is used, asking people to think about what would the industry need to do to align with the sustainability principles. And that process of engaging them is really what is building the ownership for the roadmap itself. Every year they produce an annual report, so there's a lot of information that I won't have time to go into, but certainly there's a lot of detail about this whole program. Just a few highlights of some of the things that have been done. I mentioned there were 5 challenges that the roadmap is based around. You can see in the top left, this is around recycling. So that's connected to the controlled loop ambition. The bottom left is around sustainable use of additives. So getting rid of the substances that we now understand shouldn't be in these types of products. Lead was one of the ones that's been phased out, cadmium and others. And there's now work on a new methodology that is helping to assess additives. The top right is around a product label that is now third-party verifying the performance of companies that are working towards these targets. The middle on the right is about the industry being one of the front runners in the Circular Plastics Alliance, committing to recycling 1 million tons by 2030. I think it's collectively 10 million for all plastics, and the PVC industry is committed to 1 million of that so far. And then in the bottom, you see an example where there's even been a substitution of the fossil feedstock to a bio-based alternative. So there's a lot of things happening under these different challenges. But again, because these principles were science-based and then told them what are the real challenges they need to work towards, then it sort of acted as a real compass and given them credibility and a robustness to their overall roadmap. Sustainability awareness has been a really big topic. Because of the complexity of the value chain, it's been really important to have this constant dialogues within the industry and outside around how are they going, what's their progress, and really building sustainability as a language in the industry, which really wasn't there 10, 20 years ago. So if I just now conclude, a few of the strengths I see, obviously the sustainability principles were critical in building consensus on the industry's challenges for them to acknowledge them. Creating a vision to overcome those challenges and a common roadmap is essential. We can see that there's been a real shift in the mindset and a great deal of progress because there's been targets and external monitoring. And obviously then the role of key people and the organization behind this has been essential in building trust and towards both industry stakeholders and external stakeholders within the European Commission, within all parts of the value chain and downstream industries as well. If I talk about a few challenges, I think it's really been driven by external pressure. It hasn't been it's voluntary, yes, but it's been driven by the need to do something because stakeholders have not been satisfied. We can see that it's a lot of hard work to transform an industry with certain challenges. And you set those challenges 10 years ago. And then now when you look at some of the targets, you can see that people want things to happen a lot faster. And obviously when you have an industry roadmap, it's about making sure that the change is happening at all levels. It's not just at the industry. It has to happen down in the organizations and really integrated into the individual business models. If I just finally conclude on the last point, this is an example of initiative just in Europe. And the industry in Europe is not the biggest in the world. And many of the issues with PVC are very, very different in other parts of the world because the same standards have not been built. So I think this is going to be one of the real challenges about how to scale this type of initiative up and to take it global. So I'm just going to pause there. I know that might have been a lot to take in. I just want to see if there's any reflections or questions from what's been said in the presentation so far. I can see a comment from Daniel, very interesting. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, that there are sometimes issues with separating the plastic, like here, like the understanding of people, like what can be recycled and what is not recyclable. So do you have like a set of like description and people are aware of like what can can be actually recycled, or yeah, how do you deal with that? Thanks.
Okay, so I can. One of the things with one of the problems with plastics recycling today is that plastics have got different, chemical formulations and properties. So when they're all blended in together, it's not so good. And especially with PVC, because when you burn PVC, it can generate toxic emissions. So it's been quite important to, first of all, promote the idea that PVC needs to be recycled and it shouldn't be landfilled or incinerated. The second thing is then to have a dedicated collection schemes for PVC. So that's actually what the industry has done. They've built their own recycling system that has allowed, right across Europe, that has allowed them to collect PVC and keep the materials, the PVC material stream together. The other thing I can probably add is that PVC, the bulk of PVC is used in building and construction. There is some in like medical devices and packaging and such, but the bulk of it, I think it's about 70%, or might be even a bit more in Europe, is in building and construction. And so that means that the issues with consumers recycling PVC are not necessarily the same as the general debate about plastics recycling and consumers not knowing what to do with different materials and how to recycle them. So you can imagine a demolition company on a construction site rips out the PVC window frames or the wiring. It's more industrial recycling that's happening there rather than consumers.
I have another question.
Go for it.
Great presentation, Richard. Thank you. At the same time this initiative was happening, the use of PVC in the construction industry has grown exponentially. So to what you said about, this is great. There's been a lot of development in Europe. How do you see this now that it's been structured and results are coming in? How do you see this expanding throughout the world?
Yeah, so one of the challenges in these 5 challenges that have been taken up in the Vinyl Plus roadmap in Europe is sustainability awareness. And so the European industry has very much been a champion and is every year they host an annual conference that brings in the stakeholders from the global PVC industry. So there has been quite a lot of effort to do knowledge transfer to other parts of the world. And you see now, in the same way that the European chemicals legislation, REACH, is sort of being copied in other regions, you see the same thing happening with Vinyl Plus as well. You can see that, and I wouldn't want to say that it's just copying it, because obviously there are initiatives happening elsewhere, but in places like South Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia, US, Canada, there are similar initiatives that are trying to also embed sustainability. I would say the benefit or the strength of the Vinyl Plus roadmap is that it's underpinned by this science-based understanding of sustainability, and they've really been quite rigorous in how they've stuck to that. So you can read a lot on the Vinyl Plus website. Then the final comment I could make is that it's very much on the agenda to see how can you take Vinyl Plus global. So could it be through tools like a product label that is spread more globally, but it's based on the standard in Europe, or to setting up a global Vinyl Plus equivalent program? And I mean, that's one of the questions that we have as well, that we see that there's been a lot of hard work gone in to help the industry in Europe. And I think it's a real credit to the industry that they have agreed to work closely with the Natural Step on this over a number of years. But we also know that it's sort of like, it's really not where the big problem is now. It's sort of like uncontrolled incineration. It's lower standards around PVC production. It's the wrong additives that is happening more and more as the industry moves to basically to Asia, I would say. So we want to sort of see if there's some way we can help influence that. And, you know, it's to team up as well with like setting standards that eventually sort of only create the new playing field for PVC.
Thank you.
I have a question too. So thank you, Richard, for that comprehensive presentation. My question is building up on what Alexandra said about the increase in the use of PVC. I'm imagining that some of it comes from just the increase in consumption in society, that we need more and more construction. But I could imagine also that some of it could come from the substitution of wood. So how do we deal with this discussion about whether we should be moving away from PVC, or should we be saving our forests? So how has that been in the discussion, or how could we deal with that in the methodology that you have used?
So yeah, definitely. So the methodology isn't, as you'll see, it's not just about PVC. So the same methodology could be done to look at, you know, buildings in general. How can we make buildings sustainable and have a roadmap for sustainable buildings? Because PVC is a value chain, the Vinyl Plus is a value chain program. It's got multiple, it's serving multiple industries. So I think it probably needs to be tied to other initiatives as well, where there are discussions, like in the green building sector, for example. There are green building schemes, and they're then looking at how to make the building the greenest possible. And then they get down to the material level, and then they set criteria to say, we'll accept a building that has these types of materials. And what is happening now with for example, the product label that I mentioned briefly, is that there is now efforts to have that product label recognized in the green building schemes, in the same way that FSC timber may be recognized in those green building schemes as well. So I think it's a bit of an aggregate thing. It's not to say that the schemes themselves, there hasn't been a benchmarking to say that all buildings should be made out of wood or all buildings should be made out of PVC or anything like that. But it's more about creating the tools so that then downstream industries can have guidance on, if they do need the performance of a certain material, what should they look for? They should look for the PVC that meets these higher standards if they're going to select PVC. But the choice about whether they select PVC is a sort of higher level question that I think still needs to be answered.
Thank you.
You got my mind thinking a little bit there about it's the same question in comparison with plastics. Often people are like, oh, we should get rid of this plastic and use this plastic instead. But if you don't do the same evaluation of the plastic that you're replacing and the new plastic, then you don't really know if you're creating unforeseen problems as well. So we need to have the same sustainability criteria and lens when we're evaluating a substitution from something to something else. In the Vinyl Plus case, what they've done is they've looked at how to use the competence of the PVC industry, where it's like made up of oil and salt and additives and everything. How do they use that competence and make it the most sustainable it can be, using this definition of sustainability?
Yeah.
We have a question from Anna as well here. You raised your hand.
Yes, can I ask a question, please, or make a comment?
Go for it.
Right, I think that these initiatives are very positive, and we've seen them across other industries like the cotton better initiative or the sugarcane. But I think that one of the key issues here is that they must be very transparent, and there must be some sort of independent panel to ensure that information that results from it is true, because I think a lot of people in society are just so afraid of greenwashing and industries trying to ban the results on their side. In this work you've done with the vinyl industry, did you have like an independent panel or observers to ensure transparency and reliability?
Yeah, so there's two ways that has been addressed. One of them was to partner with the Natural Step as an independent NGO that has this methodology to guide them. So that's one thing. We've been acting as a sort of a coach or advisor and critical friend to the industry, giving advice from a sustainability perspective, and this whole idea of backcasting and making sure that they understand that the scope of sustainability has to be comprehensive. Then when it comes to like the measurement of progress and the accuracy of the claims, there is an external monitoring committee, and there is representatives from the European Commission, universities, different stakeholder organizations on that monitoring committee. And then when it comes down to the product level, the product label that's been developed in this scheme has been developed together with BRE, which has the British standard on responsible sourcing, and they're the ones behind the Blume Green Building Rating Scheme. So they are the ones that are signing off on the audits that are done on when products are being verified and getting a product label. So there's a few different mechanisms there that are designed to address this transparency question. Every year, the Natural Step writes a third-party commentary into the Vinyl Plus annual report, sharing our view from our experience of coaching the industry, what we think. Then there's a monitoring committee, and then there's tools like the product label and getting things published in academia as well.
Okay. And do you have any figures about the uptake of this labeled PVC?
Yes, if you go to vinylplus.eu, you can click on a button that says product label, and you'll see that there's about, I think there's about 12 producers, and there's a map with all the manufacturing sites that have been audited, and then there's actually a list of all the labeled products there as well.
I'd like to add a comment here on the importance of a label, because especially in the construction industry, the end user, the specifier, doesn't know about chemistry, doesn't know about a lot of the important issues that go into choosing something and the trade-offs. So if you have a label independently verified, like the FSC has brought a whole new set of opportunities to the wood industry, I think it's going to really make the initiative move ahead and be a real source of alternative for the construction industry.
I can just add something on that very briefly before we move forward. So the label was something that the Natural Step really pushed for very early on. And I think there was part of the change that we've seen is that I think the industry has been in a very defensive position for so long that they sort of felt like they need to be together and have a united voice. And I think they need a united voice to address sustainability. I don't think they need a united voice to defend themselves, because in the 20 years that this has been happening, there's been more and more recognition that the whole system needs to change. Everyone is part of the problem. Everyone needs to be part of the solution. And so in that way, the idea of separating between the better performers and the worst performers in the same industry was a bit controversial, and it took some time to get it approved, but it was launched in, I think it was 2017-18, and since then it's sort of been like the champagne cork has come out, and now or the ketchup effect, that now everyone is starting to want the label because they see that their competitors have got the label. So now it's actually acting as an innovation driver to get more and more companies to take this up. The next step will be to get procurers to start asking for the label, because then when they do, it's much easier to sort of, you know, change the playing field basically. They've just actually had it approved for green public procurement in Belgium. So that's one of the first steps as well. And I think it's on the process of being added to the BREEAM green rating scheme at the moment. So my suggestion is that we hand over to Erica so we can hear some same method, totally different process and industry or area topic, let's say, bioregional regional development and such. Can I hand over to you, Erica, then?
Oh, yes, please. I'm ready to go.
I think you might already, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go from here. Let's see if we end up on the right slide now. Yes. So thank you, Richard. And yes, this is a different case, same methodology. And I was thinking the PVC industry started acting from like more of a risk management and a customer pressure kind of point with the Greenpeace taking action, etc. And Åland then is an autonomous political region, and so we didn't have any external pressure, but more of a citizens or grassroots pressure to move on and yeah, step up the work. So the pressure was a bit different, and therefore also the process is of course a bit different, since this is about a societal roadmap then. So let's just situate Åland in Europe here first, so we know what we're talking about. So it's in the northern Baltic between Sweden and Finland. We have a group of islands called the Åland Islands. And a few facts to start with. On the right is our own flag, because we are an autonomous, self-governed region, part of Finland. We have our own parliament and government, which is equal to the Finnish parliament and government. And therefore we also have to comply with legislation on 3 levels. So the EU legislation, the Finnish national legislation concerning taxes, etc. And then we also have our own legislation concerning internal matters. So this is, you could consider it like a micro country. And I say micro or maybe super micro because we are only 30,000 inhabitants here. So this is really super small, living on about 6,500 islands. Despite that, we have 16 municipalities. So we have a national level and then 16 municipalities that are also governing themselves. Among the smallest only have 92 inhabitants. So, and then we have one city, one town. So yeah, so warmly welcome to the story Everyone Can Flourish. A little bit about the background. We have a historical context where, you know, living in an archipelago very close to the sea and the natural forces, we have always had a strong wish to protect nature and live close to different biohabitats. And therefore we have had an ambitious environmental work already since the 80s within the government administration. We also had a very successful local Agenda 21 office, and which was also awarded with the Nordic Council Environment Award in the 90s. So we have had quite a strong ambition and tried to do our work within the environmental work historically. But nonetheless, what we could see was a little bit of an incremental progress, a bit slow, like step-by-step progress. And that was due to not really fully understanding what is full sustainability, so that was lacking. And then we saw that there was a need for a more systems-based and strategic approach to working with sustainability, both environmental and social sustainability. So therefore in 2011, we started the work with an all-party initiative, which then was taken forward by the newly elected government in 2011. So we appointed a committee, which then had the task of developing a strategy for how to bring a more strategic sustainability work to Åland. And this strategy transitioned Åland, which was then called Strategic Planning for a Sustainable Future, 2013 to 2051. Let me just admit here. Was then approved by the parliament in 2014. So that was sort of a stepping stone in this work, where all of the parliament said that let's move along and make Åland fully sustainable by 2051. And this should be then according to the sustainability principles that Richard mentioned, and also by using the methodology of backcasting and the long-term systems perspective. And this was quite new then, that you had a government deciding, or a parliament also deciding, that 9 consecutive governments ahead from 2014 would work in line with this methodology and step by step bring the whole society within the frames of the sustainability principles. Let's see, now I can't shift the slide for some reason. Sorry for that. Let's try again. Yeah, so here's to show then that from approving that strategy, we said that let's work with the backcasting. So the question was then, what is a viable, sustainable Åland in 2051? And this should then encompass both different industries and also social sustainability. So everything we do on Åland should be moved within the principles of sustainability. So that was the first step. This was then the vision of Åland that we wanted to develop. And we started that in February 2016 by establishing a network called Bärkraft.ax. Bärkraft is the Swedish word for a viable society. And within that network, we had stakeholders from all of the different sectors of society, both public and business sector, and also third sector and academia. So we invited about 150 people, of which 50 people were experts in different fields, to develop a vision, and through different workshops and different input during a 6-month process. And that's the development and sustainability agenda for Åland that was then developed. So this is the vision, and it also entails the 7 strategic development goals that is a part of making the vision more concrete. So let me now present the vision for Åland in 2051 is everyone can flourish in a viable society on the islands of peace. So this is where we say that everyone can flourish. So everyone doesn't have to flourish, but you can if you choose to. And we should, of course, do that within the boundaries of a viable society, which concerns then all of the different industries, as we mentioned earlier. And it should be done on the islands of peace. So the Åland Islands are demilitarized, and this was also a very important aspect of the Åland identity that was then brought forth and became part of the vision then for the Åland sustainable vision. So, and then this is the fluffy version, and then we said, okay, we need to make this a bit more concrete. So we also developed then the goals, the 7 strategic development goals, which are then not for 2051, but for 2030 is the time for when these should be achieved. So this is now part of our framing of what is success, and they are co-created, and they're also based on the sustainability principles, which means that goal 1 and 2 are concerns social sustainability in society. So both health and trust, and a possibility to grow and create meaning in society and in the individual. Goal 3 is around water, which is of course very important to the Åland Islands, since we're situated in the middle of the Baltic. We were also talking about Goal 4, about biodiversity and ecosystems in balance. And then we have a Goal 5, which is about the attractiveness for both residents and visitors and other businesses. And we also want to work strategically on transforming the energy sector. So we were saying that we also need a goal on that. And last but not least, we were also talking about sustainable and mindful patterns of consumption and production. And this, I think, the last goal also ties into a little bit where if we work both in industries and societies, and we have societies which also start demanding a sustainable consumption, then of course that would also be an incentive for industries to move on in the right direction. So this is also where both industries and societies can support each other in transitioning and transforming systems. I don't really know what's happening now, but let's, yes. So, and then we had developed the vision, the A step, and then of course we wanted to move back to the current reality in the B step of the ABCD backcasting model. And then we said we also need to monitor and have indicators for our work. So we then said we need to report on this, and it should be done every year, so that we make sure that in the 10 years ahead that we have to move towards the goals for 2030, that we actually make progressive steps. So that is where the status reports came into action. So this is our Åland way of making sure that we report in a transparent way to all of society on what's happening, and that we follow up on the indicators and actually see progress together. And this will also be an incentive for people in businesses and different sectors, and also grassroots people and citizens, to say, I want to be part of this work, and I want to contribute, because this is a success story, and we all want to be part of that. We've published 4 status reports so far, and the first one is also translated to English, but they're all published on the bärkraft.ax page. By 2019, we had the agenda developed with the vision. We also had the status report developed, and by that time we had established what we call then the sustainability gap. So we had a fair idea of what was needed in order to move society from the current reality into the vision of 2051. And for that work, we were then rewarded with the European Sustainability Award. So we were the only Nordic participant that was awarded this. And so we were, of course, quite proud of that. And that also gave us more motivation to continue the work together. So here's an overview of the process of the implementation of the vision and the work. So on the far right, you have the vision, and you also have the strategic development goals. And then on the left, you have the implementation, and underneath we have the status reports then as an annual monitoring, including the indicators. And so what is then the challenge is to then develop, a set of actions and roadmaps, and in order to move towards the vision in a strategic way. And so this sketch is to say that it takes every organization, it takes every business, it takes every association to help Åland society move in this direction. So in every budget, in every action plan and so forth, we need to think about this, and we need to incorporate and implement this development and sustainability agenda. So now we have a work in communicating this to the public and to the broader sectors, and to ask, okay, so how can we all be part of this work and create action plans and see how we could coordinate our actions, etc., in a cross-sector manner and in a cross-industry manner as well. And this means that the government and the parliament oversees this work, but it's up to all of us to actually contribute and be part of the actual implementation. Oh, geez. I'm so sorry for this. So as part of the roadmaps, we have also developed roadmap for all the different strategic goals. So we have 7 strategic goals. That means we have 7 overarching roadmaps towards 2030. And in this picture, you could see that these are all published online. So if you go to the webpage of the bärkraft.ax, everyone in society could go there and have a look and to see what the roadmaps and what actions they entail, and how everyone can contribute in different ways. So this is the first iteration now of the roadmap that was published in June, and so there's a continuous work, and of course, to reiterate these roadmaps and to check, okay, are we moving in line with what we are saying that we should do, or is there any adjustments that are needed? So you could both look for different years and different actions, and you could also look for different strategic goals and to just see what is happening within each goal. So this is like a multi-dimensional web page then for the roadmaps. So then everyone could follow the work and everyone could be part of it. So I just have a few slides, so bear with me on this one. So this is now the system, the Åland system. And if we start from the center of this picture, we can see that there we have the vision at the center of society and at the center of work. And so the vision is also about social and ecological sustainability. And then we say that using this method of backcasting and ABCD work, we say that the economy should then not be a goal in itself, but be a means to how we could achieve this. So this is how we set it up. And then we have all the different citizens of society. We have civil society, we have businesses, we have education and culture, and innovation and research that will then take part of this work. And on the outer end, we have the different government agencies, the parliament, and also the government, and different municipalities that will then support and be the basis of the work and how to bring that forward. And that's also where a lot of the experts monitor the work. So let's move on. About the implementation process, I will take this really fast now. The challenge is now to also incorporate this into budgeting. So all the different actions and roadmaps, and to say, okay, so how do we then base our budgeting on that as well? So not on forecasting an incremental change, but actually on a future-based and vision-based work. We also had different industry and sector-based strategies. And a program for structural development, which we call it, which is all about societal planning and deciding on how do we use our land, how much should be saved for development, and how much should be protected, etc. So how do we use our resources, and that concerns both land and water resources. And of course, we have a few of the EU financial programs also aligned with the agenda. That is also a challenge within agriculture and forestry and fishery. And the next period of 7 years is actually crucial for our possibility to actually implement the agenda in the way that is needed. So some of the challenges then. We need a lot more training and competence building in order to make sure that we have the capacity to actually move ahead and learn more about how to work in line with the methodology and what are principles, etc. We also have a challenge on reaching beyond silos. We see that the way we have set up the structure, and we have working groups that are cross-agency and cross-sectoral working groups, and that also helps, but it's still a challenge of establishing new ways of working together. We know that the framework works, so to say, we know that, but we are sort of still pioneering it from a country level with all the different legislative levels, etc., etc. So this is a pioneering work, and of course that is also a challenge, and still encouraging people to move into the unknown, and how do we move as agencies and businesses, how do we move into the unknown? And then, of course, we have some strengths, and that is what Richard already mentioned, that by using this methodology, we have acquired a common language on sustainability. So we don't have to argue on that. Well, in my point of view, sustainability is this, because this is what you could also almost always hear from different politicians, that they could look differently on sustainability and then accentuate different aspects of sustainability. But now we have established a common language, and we have the principles, so that helps us all move forward in the same direction. And we also have a strength in that we managed to say that sustainability is not just something that is up to one government or the other, but we actually need to move forward for several consecutive election periods. So that has given strength, and it's also a clear message to the local businesses to say this is not something that they need to be afraid there or worry that goes away when the a new government comes into action, but they could actually rely on this, and this is we are in it for the long term. So this is a good aspect of it as well, and a strength. And also we have a broad stakeholder engagement and within the network, and it's also encompassing a lot of different sectors and both academia and business and civil sector. And of course, it's a strength on all ends, since we are a small society. So we like the distance between different decision levels is not so big. So we could easily come to agreements. Okay, now this happens, so we need to move forward like this, and then it doesn't have to take several years to start to implement it or change something, but we could actually move forward. Once we decide, we can move forward quite quickly. So this then helps to develop this model of how to incorporate and implement sustainability on a societal level. So this will then be more of a blueprint for how other societies could also scale this up or actually take parts of the methodology and the work we have done and replicate it in different circumstances. So thank you for your time and patience with the tech issues. And yeah, now we have a few minutes for Q&A if there are any questions on this presentation.
So Erica, while you field questions, if you make me the presenter, I will get ready for the next bit. Thank you, very interesting presentation. I've know some of the background of this case, but I always get inspired listening to you talk about it, because it really is pioneering work that's been going on there. And that's kind of, you know, it's fascinating to see, first of all, how Åland operates, but also how like a process like this can unfold and be anchored in the society in the way that this is.
I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for a very nice presentation. I'd like to know what triggered the initiative. What triggered all of this to happen?
Yeah, so the trigger point was that we were seeing that there was a lack of full sustainability. So there were actually a couple of us that knew about the framework and the principles. And we saw that there had been municipalities in Sweden within a network called the Swedish Ecom municipalities, who had been encompassing the principles, and that was their main sort of target to work with. We could also see that they had maybe not fully implementing the backcasting as a methodology, so that's where we sort of wanted to spearhead the framework a little bit. But that was the target, like the starting point for this, and then we formed this all-party initiative that we said, yes, let's do a political campaign for this, because we were all engaged in the political dimension, because we said that we have had a lot of grassroots initiatives and like administrative, like government administrative initiatives and laws, environmental laws, etc. But we didn't see that the leadership in society actually had taken on the full responsibility of working more strategically towards sustainability. So we wanted to emphasize the leadership aspect, and we said, okay, let's do that from a political stance then, because then we need the political leadership to agree on this and move forward together. And so that was part of the campaign then, to say, no matter who wins the election, these are this is the work that we want them to do, and so this is not a party issue, but an all-party issue for all of humanity, so to say. So yeah.
Can I just follow up on that, Erica? So if this is now a longer-term strategy, how are the parties competing for election then?
Oh, there are lots of different other issues that they could compete on, you know, socialist and right-wing. Yeah, there's no lack of that. No, but I mean, even though we have agreed on Åland as a sustainable society and we have the roadmaps, still there's always prioritization that needs to take place. So should we prioritize this or this within the budget? So we have just finished a budgeting process for Åland. So I think it's about 350 million euros now that we need to decide on how do we use it, how do we prioritize. But of course, there are different ideas on what needs to take place first, and the politicians could play their cards as well in this process. So yeah. So no, we are not like taking away the need of politicians here. No. That's not what's happening, but we're sort of more aligning and yeah, try to encourage the politicians to talk about sustainability on more from a systems level, and yeah, that's what we're doing.
Mm.
Any more questions?
I can go. I have another question. And my question is about, you had an objective about happiness. And I'm wondering if you have a framework for that, because I'm thinking like, is it different for different regions and for different cultures? Bhutan has this happiness index, Costa Rica has something else, and the Norwegians will probably define happiness as when you don't see your neighbor, you're really happy, you know? So I'm wondering what framework are you using for that?
Yeah, at this point, we're not using any particular framework, but the actions have been brought forward and suggested within a series of workshops where all of society has been invited to participate, to actually say, okay, so in order to have these, to reach these goals and the vision, what actions do we need to take? What actually means something to us, and what is it that we are lacking at this point? So I think even though you're using the principles as a basic framework of success, it's still up to each society and in each context to define what actions are needed in order for us to create more happiness. And that is where the creative part of the framework sort of comes into action. So it's not any, we're not saying that we have any rigorous stance on what actions need to be taken in every society, but it's more of a blueprint for a process so that we can allow a more participatory process in society, and so that we could actually start asking ourselves the question, okay, so if we want to flourish in our society, what does that mean to us, and how could we accomplish it? So that has allowed for more questions to be asked, and then for everyone to contribute in that conversation.
Thank you.
Any further questions around the Orlan case for Erica? So we know that there are people listening in live streaming. Obviously, we can't have their questions, but those who are in the Zoom meeting get the chance. Now's your chance.
Yeah, so let's move on, and maybe we can take some more questions in the plenary summary session. So
yeah. So now, do you see my screen with the dialogue?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
You do, yes. Okay, so we'll see if I have the same glitch here, but I'm going to try and go forward here. So the thinking was that we're going to have just a discussion. We have about half an hour before we need to wrap up. So in the beginning, when I was setting the context about transforming systems, I mentioned these 3 points, and I'm just putting them back up now for a moment to remind you of them, and to see if you can relate to any of the points that are here from the case studies that were presented. I certainly can, because Eric and I have discussed these and feel like these are in some of the insights. There are probably many more, but just bear them in mind. The thinking was that we would ask you to reflect on 2 questions now, and obviously we can go into breakout rooms. I don't know if we actually should do that, given the number of people here. How do you feel about that? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. Okay, Stanley wants a breakout room. So while I just get that organized, just make a note of the questions, because they won't appear on the screen when you go into the breakout room. So
you can take a picture.
Yeah, do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there while I get that. So I'm going to just suggest that we're in 3 breakout rooms, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we will assign automatically. If that's not okay, come back into the main room and we'll take it from there. Sound okay?
Yeah.
Good.
So I think we'll take around, let's take 20 minutes, and then we'll come in for just a round of wrap up before we need to be out of the room at 10 minutes before the hour.
Great. Hi. Who is P? It's the Planetiers. Is there someone there?
Yes, and it's me, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
Do you want to show us your face?
I'm sorry.
You can't?
Hi.
Yeah, there you are.
I'm just going to present briefly like myself. I'm the content manager for Planetiers World Gathering. So I'm also your host on top of that. So I'm working on everything the event and talking to you guys as well. Okay, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you. So, should we do introductions? My name is Stanley. I am part of the Natural Step Network. I'm also part of the new Sustainability Collaborative. That is a platform for people working with sustainability to get together to work and do interesting projects. I'm also active in a regenerative movement. Together with Victoria, we are part of the SEEDS movement for regeneration in Zimbabwe. I was yesterday in a session about leading from love, so I'm doing a lot of things, but happy to be here with you.
Hello everyone, my name is Elizabeth Monteiro. My English is not very good, I'm Portuguese. I work at Banco Atlantic Europa, and we start 1 year ago in this thematic of sustainability. So I'm here to learn and listen everyone and take some ideas to implement on the bank in our services.
Your English is perfect. We are all, no one of us is English speaking, so we are gonna all be killing the English.
Yeah, my name is Victoria Sievas and I'm currently in Scotland, originally from Hungary. And as Tony mentioned, I'm involved in the Zimbabwe regeneration kind of movement. Also here in Aberdeen, I got involved in a community growing project. So that's at the very beginning. So I think it is a good ideas how to get communities together in that workshop as well. And in general, I'm interested in sustainability and would like to kind of work on this area moving forward as well.
Thank you. So we have two questions. What insights do you take from these cases? So in other words, what did you learn or what stood out for you? And number two is how can these types of initiatives be scaled up and replicated? It's clear the English?
Okay, I can start really briefly because I'm working at the event at the same time as I mentioned. But I mean, I work in communication and I've interned the Natural Step for a few months just. So I'm pretty familiar with the framework, but still I think the biggest thing that people still don't think about, even in a world that we are all connected and we think about more and more about sustainability and how to make sustainability happen within our limits and for societal purposes. I think the thing that resonated the most was to have a systemic mindset, right? So just thinking about solutions, if you don't think about the whole process, the whole business, the whole sector, all of the intervenients, all the agents, and if that solution works for a sector or for a business, but it completely disrupts another, it's not an actual solution, right? So I think that's what people don't think about it most, because they just want to demonize plastics, PVC, wherever. But and then they just demonize it. They find a solution that's not really a solution because it actually comes in disruption to other industries, right? So that's the thing that resonated the most, the importance to actually have a systemic mindset and when implementing solutions.
Thank you. So I can follow up on that. I think when I look at the case for Holland as a country, it's actually bigger than some countries. It's almost the same size as Liechtenstein. And I'm thinking about how complex the whole program has been, it looks like at least, and how that could translate into another country, a bigger country like Portugal or like the United States, you know. What would be the best way to actually break the country down into its minor complexity so that you can have a holistic, also systemic look at the country, you know. And also I was fascinated by the political consensus that they got before they even started the program. That I think is really critical, you know. So those are the two things that I'm thinking about. It's really important to get that political buy-in into the program, I think, from the beginning.
I agree with that you have to involve the political side of the things and also the people, because your project won't succeed if either or fails. If, as you said, like there will be standing projects instead of the community project, or you know, there is the will from the people, but there is no support from the legal side of the project. And I think it was quite hard for them as well, because they had to comply with two regulations, as they said, to start with. So I guess it had been a lot of work on the documentation side. But I also like the idea of the vision casting. I have met it before, but I think that's the best way. You have a vision for the future, and then you try to implement it for today and see what steps you need to take going forward to make it happen. I think that's probably the easiest. But you know, once you have the vision and then you find out what you can do today, probably that vision will change at the end of the day, because your resources and you know all the things that you can do won't come together on the way as you initially planned. So you probably have to adjust your vision by the time you get there.
I totally agree with all you ever say. For me, in my personal opinion, it was very difficult this way, you know, because we start 1 year ago, people like to talk about stability and all matters about this question, but they do it anything to change, okay? So sometimes me and my partner, my colleague, have some difficulty to how we can change the mindset of our company, you know, because we think we have to start inside, then outside. So we are in this moment, we are trying to change the mindset inside of the bank. It's not easy. We are very young people, but we have some kind of resistance for change for the old people where I work. So it's not easy, you know, but I really believe this is the future. So together we can change, together we can do a lot of things. It's good to be here and with you to learn more about how we can do it.
I would like to follow up on everything that you guys said. So I think and what I think we try to bring with the Planetiers World Gathering is education. I think the foundation is in education. That's the reason why governments, the political side, doesn't have a strong support, you know, because they don't get, I think they don't get still the economic parts, the social parts, and the environmental part together, you know, like Richard was telling us. And I think that's the base, and we have to create a sustainability kind of education for everyone. Like that's what we're actually trying to do in Portugal. But I mean, listening to Richard and Erika, I mean, Sweden and Finland have really different mindsets than Portugal, and we still understand that there are some frictions between the support, you know. So yeah, I'll get back to you, Stanley, because maybe we start on the same.
We have 5 minutes more.
I agree with Teresa. I don't know her name. Like what I did in the Gaia program, we did an analysis as well, and we have analyzed the environmental, social, economic aspects, and also the worldview of the people to get a kind of more holistic plan to go ahead that was in relation to the Mangbende Orphan Care Trust. And yeah, I think a project can only be inclusive if you are analyzing more aspects of the effect of the project. Otherwise, surely it will be a negative impact still, but it would be more concern about the impacts of the project is having, and also more inclusive than if you are just focusing on the economical financial gains and profits. And as Elizabeth said, it is good to have some exemplar projects so we can be inspired, and also something to relate to when we start our own projects, how to go around and probably where to get information from.
Yeah, I'm wondering what comes first. Is it the stakeholders demanding change, or is it the leadership having a clear vision, you know? In politics, we know that politicians don't do anything that will give them less than 50% of the vote. So that's, if they can see that they will get the vote of the majority of the people, they will do it, you know?
Yeah,
so,
sorry, yeah, I think it should come from the people, to be honest. Well, yeah. Obviously, sometimes it's come from above, but usually projects are succeeding more if it is, or people are more willing to relate to it and implement it if it is coming from them instead of coming from above, and they could relate to it. That's my, I wouldn't say experience, but that's what I think.
Yeah, I have seen several good projects, and almost all of them have a clear vision. And the visioning process is involving as many people and stakeholders as possible. I visited Kerala. I don't know if you have come across the case of Kerala. Kerala is a state in India with 30 million people. It's bigger than most countries. And one leader had a clear vision. And the vision was, this is what we're going to do for our development, and then go back to the people and ask them what they think about creating a vision that will make it possible to achieve this. And that, I think, is the two combination of, you know, a visionary leader and the people buying the support of the people at the same time. Otherwise, my experience has also been that we share a similar vision, or everybody shares a similar vision. We all want peace. We want our children to grow up in a good environment, you know. But where we differ is what is the priority right now. Yeah.
Really good insights, Stanley. Should we go back to the other room to meet everybody and discuss it further for the next minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we still have 2 minutes. If Elizabeth wants to say something, 1 minute.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
You are muted,
Sorry,
Elizabeth.
you're muted.
In my bank, for like a curiosity, it was our shareholder that gave this vision and this strategy to our bank, not the CEO, not the other people. Was the all shareholders say we have to change our strategy, we have to be sustainability. So for us, it's good to be from someone in the big position, you know, but sometimes come from low position, then grow. In my bank, it was different, but
Excellent.
Discussions.
Very good.
We have about 10 minutes to just wrap up. So I'm thinking maybe we could have a report from group 1 on the type of things that you discussed, and then group 2, and then we can just wrap things up.
How do we know what group we were in?
You don't know that? Okay.
No.
I know, Alexandra, you were in group 1. I know that for sure.
Okay. So group 1 mates, who would like to talk? Anna, you're the local representative.
I mean, that's a big responsibility. I don't know if, well, okay, let me see. So we've been discussing how, well, I suppose I'm going to add something that maybe we didn't discuss in a very objective way, but I think it's an introduction to what we have discussed. So the insights from these methods is that we need to have some sort of pressure to put people around the table to discuss the planning, the backwards planning. So I think that was, it's the starting point, you know, why would people talk to each other? And we're discussing that in Portugal. Well, me, the local one, find it very difficult to find that pressure from civil society or from political leadership, because the level of awareness is not yet at that stage. And that potentially one route to go in the right way would be to improve communication in a way to make environmental problems more relevant to the common citizen, so that people would feel a bit more energized and interested in the subject and not see it as a niche subject of environmental people. So that was my understanding. Please, Alexandra and Patricia and Daniel, if you have other things to say.
I think, thank you, Anna. What Patricia brought up about the strategy, like how to be strategic about the symbiosis happening, like who needs to talk to who, what connections we have to make in a society, in a specific system, so that we can leverage all the efforts, right, coming from different places. I think that was also key. Yeah.
So how about from the other group? There were only 2 groups in the end, so if you weren't in the if you weren't in the same group as the others.
So anyone would like to say anything from group 2?
I think you are our representative, Teresa.
I'm sorry, Stanley?
I think you are our representative.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so we're discussing a little bit. It was kind of we're trying to go to the scale of parts, because we started what insights we gathered, and then we quickly moved to kind of scalability. So we're talking a little bit about how we need to connect the various parts of society, you know, the private, the business sector, the people in general, and the politics, and how your case studies showed us, even in like progressive countries, you still have this barrier of political interest, right? So and how could we move past that? And then we're just sharing a little bit about our own insights inside our companies and inside our projects, and how it's like the mindset here in Portugal is really different from your countries, Richard and Erika, but still we have the same problem regarding lack of education, as you said as well, Daniela, a lack of education in sustainability, lack of communication. And I think that's really the foundation for starting projects, because if we're not aligned, as you mentioned, Richard, if we're not, these three kind of sectors are not aligned to get an environmental message out, we just cannot do it efficiently. You know, we have like the people that really want to start projects, but still we have this barrier in political parties and in education as well, because at least here in Portugal it's really strict, the education, and they are not allowing it yet. We're trying to do it this with the Planetiers World Gathering, and hopefully we'll succeed, fingers crossed. But so Stanley, do you want to add something?
Well said, thank you. I'm wondering about if others in our group want to add. Elizabeth was cut off when she was saying something very, very interesting. So maybe that's your chance, Elizabeth.
I said a lot of things, so I don't know what you specific want me to tell, but I'm working in a bank, Atlantic Bank in Lisbon. We started 1 year ago this way about sustainability. It was not easy, but we are confident. It's our shareholder that give us this strategic mindset, not board, but our shareholders. So we try to do this, but it's not easy, you know, because we are in the bank, we are very young, about 30 years, the average. So we try, the people like this kind of thing, sustainability and all about environmental things and something like that, but they don't change the mindset, you know. It's important, like Teresa said, the communication to involve everyone, so to have the same purpose and make a strategic and go away. So for me, in personal opinion, it's not easy, you know, but we are confident we will achieve.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for my English, you know, I don't speak very fluent.
Don't worry, it was perfect.
Thank you.
If you're also thinking about your project, like it is a small, even if it's, you know, islands, it is a small area or population, and we were wondering how could it be scaled up onto bigger countries and more populated, talking about Portugal or other countries, which could be probably difficult way to implement it. But also it was very interesting, like you have to align with like two set of laws, as you said, Sweden and Norway, if I remember right. So I guess it was a lot of documentation from the legal side of bringing the project together. So it is quite interesting to learn about that.
So one reflection I have that was just triggered by what was just said is a little bit like what Erica was saying on, at least there is autonomy there. So you kind of like, there are there are constraints around the system, you know, like you have to follow the Finnish law and all these things. But you have the autonomy. And I think that's also the case in the case with the PVC case, that they're stuck in the EU regulatory system and they're being slammed by things, but they have the autonomy to control their system, what they do within that boundary. And I'm thinking about, like, just on the point about transferability of like the Åland case, I'm thinking about like cities, because I think maybe in like larger economies or countries, there's like, it feels like there's so many obstacles, but if you get to the city level, you can see that these cities are all trying to outcompete each other. So it's almost like the city level is kind of a really interesting scale. I don't know if anyone reflects on that as well, but I sort of feel it's sometimes maybe easy. I see this in Sydney. The city of Sydney is totally progressive, while the state and federal governments have got their head in the sand half the time. So.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that, I mean, we also had that conversation on Åland, and people were saying, yeah, well, we are so small. What does it matter? In the Baltic region, there are about 90 million people, and we are 30,000. So what does it matter, you know, if we move ahead? We have fish farming, and if we were to close that, what would that matter? But still, it's about saying, okay, yeah, and China and all of that. But within the boundaries of the system, as you say, Richard, we could make a lot of decisions before we actually reach the boundaries. So if we allow ourselves to actually look at that and see there's no one else who has authority over this part of the system, that's up to us what we do with it. And then we could also, once we start that work, then we can start making demands on the other 90 million people around the Baltic to say, yeah, we are doing now whatever we could, but now it's up to you to actually do your part of this. So this is an important conversation to have, like, yeah, we have the boundary conditions with the sustainability principles and some of the system, but there's so much that we can do if we decide to work together, as with the PVC industry and any kind of industry as well. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I need to go. Just wanted to say goodbye, not being rude. Really enjoyed the session.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll have new, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. We're going to have new people joining here for the next session. So we do need to vacate the room. You'll be able to reach out to us through the Planetiers website. You'll be able to find our profiles and such there if you need to get in contact with us, but very much appreciate you taking the time to join us, and let's stay in touch and sustainable transformations together.